Okay, so today we're going to be talking about designated survivor. For those of you that don't know what a designated survivor is, a designated survivor is somebody that sits out during the State of the Union in the US government so that if everybody else dies, they become the President of the United States. Now, just by that explanation, you can probably exactly guess what this show is about. So during the State of the Union, Tom Kirkman, who is our main character and a lower level House cabinet member, he's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, gets chosen to sit out of the State of the Union. Not because they think that he will make a good president if the tragic thing happens that everybody dies, but because he was actually fired earlier that day and it just has not been announced yet. But during the State of the Union, the Capitol building blows up, killing absolutely everybody, including what we think is all of Congress. And Tom Kirkman is sworn in as the President of the United States. Designated Survivor is fronted by Kiefer Sutherland and Maggie Q, both of which I am aware of before this, but I've never really seen anything. I know Kiefer Sutherland is huge because of 24, but I've never seen an episode of that. Maggie Q is in the Divergent series. She plays the character Tori, but those movies are bad and didn't really leave much of an impression on me, so I actually forgot that she was in that until I just now IMDb'd her. But yeah, now that I think about it, I remember her. She's okay in that. She's okay in this too. I mean, Kiefer Sutherland, this is a good role for him, but he's also just merely okay. Now, what I will say about this show is that it has an extremely, extremely compelling plot. I mean, this is very, very interesting. And I mean, you cannot say that the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development becoming president and everybody else in Washington, D.C. from Congress up dying in an explosion is not an amazing concept, and a concept that was explored really, really well and extremely thoroughly for the first 3 episodes, and only in the presidential side of it. After the first 3 episodes, the whole shtick of designated survivor has worn off a little bit. He's already kind of gotten used to it in 3 episodes, and by the end of season 1, it's completely done. Congress is built back up, Senate is built back up, relations with the governors are fine. He's kind of got the whole presidency down pat, his staff is running well. So after that point, the show Designated Survivor is very little about being the designated survivor and just a political and spy show, I guess, because it's also kind of a spy show, more than it's a political show most of the time. I'll get to the whole spy aspect in a minute though. But basically, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be very upfront. I didn't get much farther than I think 6 or 7 episodes into season 2 before it lost my interest completely. My wife and I binged the hell out of season 1 in bed every single night until we were done with it. Season 2, we kind of realized right from the start, this thing is floundering, it doesn't know where to go. It has played out the thing that made it original, and now it is just a half-assed politics, half-assed spy show that doesn't really know what it is, with a plot that was interesting a year ago, you know? Now, being somebody like myself that is extremely interested in politics and the presidency and has watched almost every other political show there is out there, this is a very inaccurate representation of the White House, or at least my best understanding of the White House from the research that I have done. The White House doesn't operate with 3 or 4 high-level members, and on top of that, the vice president and the president don't really interact as much as they do in this. And I realize this is a special situation because of the entire government blowing up, but they make it seem like they replaced every single member within the White House. And it just does not operate as smoothly as it does in here, and not with just a couple high-level members getting absolutely everything done. And the presidency is a much more professional setting than it portrays it in this. A lot of people, especially in his staff, disrespect the president blatantly, yell at him, argue with him, and that's just not how it rolls when you're the president. I can guarantee you that much. But the fact that it's lazy with the representation of politics, the representation of how governing actually works, the presidency, the White House in general, that brings me to the fact that this show doesn't really know what it is. It tries to be a political show, but it also tries to be a spy thriller. Maggie Q in this plays the spy, I guess. She works for the FBI, and throughout the entirety of season 1, she's working to uncover this huge government conspiracy cover-up, which is honestly very, very interesting. In the first season, it works out very well, because what actually happened was that the bombing was staged by a lower level congressman that is working with a cult that wants to take over America, thinking that it's in shambles. So they orchestrate an entire bombing. They want to rebuild the government from the ground up, with him surviving the bombing with a bunker built in the Capitol to become the vice president to Kiefer Sutherland, who they find out was actually chosen by this organization, and they want to eliminate him once he becomes vice president so that the congressman can then become the president. And this is an amazing, amazing plot. Like I said, season 1, fucking spectacular. So well thought out. Honestly, now that I think about it, this would have been a perfect mini-series. Like, 20-episode mini-series, just season 1. Nailed it. That would have been great. Would have gone down in history, but they just had to keep going with it. But either way, what I'm saying is, in season 1, this whole politics show here, spies show here with Maggie Q worked out very well. Once that was done, in season 2, and I actually have watched a couple episodes in further seasons just to see if it changes, just random ones, and I was able to follow along just fine. And it sticks with this. It never quite knows if it's a spy show or a politics show. So it just half-asses both of them, never really getting anything right, never really going full out and becoming a great spy show or a great politics show. Another thing that it does, because of this and its effort to be extremely interesting, is it becomes overly dramatic. Now I understand this is a dramatic situation. The presidency is dramatic, but you can look at a bunch of other shows that have difficult situations that don't go soap opera drama levels of drama. And that's exactly what this does. It is very, very soapy feeling. Like at any point you feel like somebody's gonna be like, I have amnesia, he's actually my brother. In fact, there is one episode that was totally out of left field and nowhere, like a subplot of the president's son possibly not being his biological son and being the son of somebody that's in prison and wanting to blackmail the president. And there's just lots of weird subplots like that that are just used to try and inject some drama, some emotion into this show. And I don't like cheap scenarios like that, badly written soap opera-like subplots in TV shows that have a lot of potential. And I'm ranting on this because this show has a lot of potential. It could have been a lot better than it is. Now, I'm not just going to rant about how this could be better without providing some ways it could have been better. Honestly, the way this could have been a lot better is focus a lot more on the rest of the country. Focus a lot more on Congress. All of Congress got wiped out. And they talk about how they had all these special elections and like a third of Congress was replaced by independents, something that is unprecedented and never happened. I would love to follow this young, inexperienced, completely new Congress. That would be absolutely amazing to see, and there'd be hundreds of different stories in there you could tell. Or maybe beyond that, you can also talk about the rest of the country, maybe show little snippets of the rest of the country, then never really explore how this affects the rest of the country, except very early on in the first season when they talk about how Michigan had an uprising with the governor and try to basically secede from the rest of the country, him claiming that he was the rightful leader of Michigan, he wasn't going to accept any help or anything from the President of the United States. More stories like that, where you see how it affects the rest of the country or the governors or Congress or the new Senate. Things like that would have been so much more interesting because this is a concept that could have been explored in a million different ways. And they explore it out completely in like the first, I'm going to say 10 episodes. And then after that, it's just a normal political show. And this does not want to be a normal political show because it is impossible to not compare this to better political shows like The West Wing, Madam Secretary, and for all of its faults, House of Cards. Those are 3 good political shows, great political shows, I would even say. And The West Wing is like a benchmark. You can't make a political show anymore without having it be compared to Aaron Sorkin's The West Wing. I compare it in my mind, as does everybody else. They haven't seen that, they compare it to House of Cards. And in no way does this measure up to any of those shows. So people aren't gonna watch those shows, especially when House of Cards was still on air when this was on air, and Madam Secretary was still on air when this was on air. And in this day and age, there's not a lot of room in there for too many political shows. That's not a big audience. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's my rant. I feel like this could have been a lot better. It was a great first season. I have no regrets of finishing watching the first season, but there's a lot of better ways they could have gone about this, and there's a lot of better political shows. So they either have to be a spy show or a political show, or if they want to be both, they got to do it a lot better with a lot different plots. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, check out my other videos.